Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Rightcurve. I'm Brian Smith, a contributor to the Jito network. I'm here with another Jito network contributor, Lucas Bruder, and founding Renzo contributor, Lucas Kaczynski. Welcome to Rightcurve, Lucas. I'm excited about your Solana news.
Thank you for having us on the call today. Super excited to share with the Jito and Solana community what Renzo is. We're a leading restaking protocol on EigenLayer and Symbiotic. In general, we believe that restaking is going to be the largest DeFi segment. So we have made it a priority to focus on building the best and most reliable and trusted restaking protocol. On Ethereum, we have Easy ETH and Peasy ETH. The whole theme around Renzo is to make restaking easy, and we're excited to introduce ezSOL on top of Jito. The sentiment that we have around restaking in general is shared with some of our largest investors, including Galaxy, Brevin Howard, Binance Labs, OKX, just to name a few. And in general, we think that the Jito team and the restaking protocol that they're launching, where Renzo will be launching ezSOL, is strongly positioned to be the market leader for restaking on top of Solana. And that has to do with the amazing success they've had around liquid staking and some of the network effects that come along with being able to attract NCNs to build on top of Jito. And we're just excited to be a part of it and introduce Renzo to the Jito and the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, no, it's amazing news. I think we're really excited to kind of see the leader from Ethereum come over and get involved on the Solana side. And there's a lot of synergies in terms of the separate communities that should be able to learn about each other.
Yeah, we think that a lot of the lessons learned that we have from Ethereum and building for over the past year there is we'll be able to bring that over to Jito and Solana and really help bootstrap the ecosystem and get things going much faster than we've been on Ethereum. So,
Solana, got to move fast. It's a motto. Yeah, and so I mean, you guys have seen restaking effectively kind of grow up from its inception, with EigenLayer obviously being the pioneer in that field. Now, I think we all agree it's still early in the restaking landscape, but I mean, there has been probably some evolution and some learnings as kind of products have started to roll out, seeing other competitors come on to EigenLayer. You know, Jito restaking is kind of the pioneer on Solana, but obviously there's a lot to learn from others in the space as this has been evolving. I mean, what would you say are kind of the most interesting learnings as restaking has kind of moved into production, and anything that, you know, people on Solana should keep in mind as they kind of learn from the lessons of others?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I think when people first think about restaking, they relate it to staking, but at the end of the day, it's significantly more complicated, right? And the reason it's more complicated is, whereas with staking, you really just have one strategy that you're running, which is you're securing the consensus layer. With restaking, you have multiple services that you could secure. And with that, it's not only the selection and knowing how, from a risk perspective, to understand what the risk rewards are for each service that you're securing, but there's complexities around how you actually return that value and those rewards to your stakers in an efficient manner. Similar to Jito, at Renzo, we have Easy and Peasy ETH, and the theme that we've had from the very beginning is to make restaking accessible to everybody. And the more variability that you have within an ecosystem, the more problems that you have the opportunity to solve for users and abstract those complexities. So even though we're super early in restaking, even on Ethereum, we think that there's this opportunity where there's all these things that we're learning on building on EigenLayer and Symbiotic that we could bring to Solana and the Jito ecosystem, And vice versa, we expect a ton of innovation to essentially happen on top of Solana because of some of the advantages it has. I know we're going to cover around speed and gas costs and where that really makes the difference. So for us at Renzo, we're solely focused on restaking. We are trying to lead the category, not only on Ethereum, but when there's an opportunity to work with a team like Jito and an ecosystem like Solana, that's where we're going to focus and try to bring that knowledge kind of across the stack.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned in your intro kind of you guys on your cap table, you have some of the more institutional style investors in the crypto space, like a Brevin Howard, Galaxy, and Binance Labs. Presumably they're also kind of around the space in an LRT landscape. I think what's really exciting about Renzo kind of getting active on Solana is that you guys do have more of the institutional connection there. I'd be curious how you think if from any conversations or just lessons of those discussions and working with them historically, like how that type of investor thinks about getting active on Solana, which has a little bit less of a history than Ethereum, but I think obviously has a lot of mind share at this stage. And would you expect them to be active in the same way on a Solana restaking platform as they are on an Ethereum restaking platform?
Yeah, I think in general, when you look at DeFi and any kind of protocol that evolves, you need time for trust. And Renzo building on Ethereum and all the lessons that we've learned over the past year, the TVL that we've been able to grow makes the protocol much more resilient and trustworthy from an institutional perspective. What we've seen so far is when you think about liquid staking, I've been in the space since 2017. It took a really long time. It's like a 4 or 5 year window from POS and just liquid staking coming kind of mainstream, and institutions are still getting comfortable with it and really building out the rails that they need for their clients and users to be able to use it. Our goal is to expedite that, not only on Ethereum, but bring that trust that we've established on Ethereum into Solana with like not only our investors, but the relationships that we get from those to essentially educate them. And we think that just like you see in tech, evolution and innovation kind of accelerates. We're going to see the same thing with restaking where there's so much value that's being captured that these institutional clients are looking for trusted partners that they know that they could work with to understand this. Now, whether that means they're going to use Renzo to get that exposure or use a hybrid model, it's a relationship-based game, and having those relationships and introductions just helps kind of accelerate the space much faster.
Yeah, for sure. No, firsthand, the process with those types of institutions is very long, but it's worthwhile just because it's critical to really move the space forward in that way. So, I mean, Lucas Bruder, VRTs, which is what we're calling the Solana restaked assets, as opposed to LRTs on Ethereum, there's some key differences on how it could impact the DeFi ecosystem as it just evolves with this new primitive. So how might Solana VRT ecosystem evolve differently compared to kind of what we see today with LRTs on Ethereum, like the main Renzo LRT there?
So yeah, the VRT is the name for the kind of receipt token of the Jito restaking protocol and stands for Vault Receipt Token. LRT stands for Liquid Restake Token. And that's right? Or is it receipt token? No, it's restaked. Brain fart. But yeah, the Jito restaking is much more than just restaking LSTs. It's asset agnostic. So you could stake like SPL governance tokens, USDC. If you wanted to get like crazy, you could stake like LP, like tokenized LP positions, which is kind of interesting. And so I think there's of course going to be a lot of LST based vault receipt tokens, because you can get a lot of security. There's like tens of billions of dollars of stake SOL in several billions of dollars in liquid staking tokens that is super cheap to access. But you'll also see a lot of, I think there will be like several AVSs that will opt to use their own governance token. And you're kind of seeing this like start to form, like EigenLayer's talking about dual staking and getting, maybe you have different slashing conditions for the governance token. Symbiotic is accepting non-LST backed assets. And so I think we'll see like there'll be a lot of VRTs on Solana composed of like different assets. There'll be like every one of those will have like a delegation manager, and this kind of turns into some of this might just be like pure staking. The protocol doesn't necessarily differentiate between restaking and staking, so like you'll have some delegation managers that are just delegating to like a single AVS that contains a bunch of different operators, like the squad's policy network or switchboard Oracle providers. If they have a token at some point, maybe they just want to delegate to their own AVS or node consensus networks. And I think we'll see like there will probably be like more specialization between these, because there will be there's just more customization that you can apply. So I think the VRTs will be like the delegation managers for those will be really in the weeds on what's going on and how to best balance assets between different operators and consensus networks.
Yeah, I think the emphasis on non kind of L1 staked assets as a security class is something that is really exciting to me. I mean, would be curious for either of you guys, like, what do you think is steady state split for a product like restaking between kind of L1 denominated assets versus other assets that are available on chain?
Yeah, the way we're seeing it on Renzo and on Ethereum, and I think we're going to see similar things, but maybe just different services. You have these LST tokens or L1 tokens that are pretty big in market cap. Those absolutely make sense to actually create a liquid representation of them and solve some of the problems around liquidity and additional use cases. But when it comes to dual token staking for governance tokens, for example, or even AVS tokens, we're treating those a little bit differently at Renzo. And over the next month, you're going to start seeing us build out the DApp, both for Solana and Ethereum, to handle those assets a little bit differently. And essentially what I'm referring to there is not every single asset needs a wrapper token and have all these DeFi integrations, which are super expensive to maintain. You need oracles, you need deep liquidity for swaps in order to really get a lend effect going. So you'll see these two kind of tiers of assets, ones that are really big on the liquidity side, and we will, wrap them with LRT. And then you'll see other tokens that are still staked to secure different kind of services. But it really comes down to what kind of security AVSs and DNDs. Is that what we're calling it?
NTNs.
ATNs. All right.
No, node consensus network.
NCNs. Okay. So NCNs, we're going to have, that's like a whole nother thing. A year ago, we were trying to learn all the terminology on EigenLayer. So now we're going to have to do the same on Solana. But essentially, it's going to come down to what NCNs are comfortable having used as security. And I think a lot of times we think of things of, an asset could either be used or not used as shared security. But there's actually levers. You could have concentration risks that you manage there, where maybe 10% of the security that you're accepting is in a governance token, right? So The nice thing when you're a VRT and also use additional services, whether it's Oracle providers or bridges, is that the users that are using those assets and Renzo as a platform are also using these other services that they're paying for. Well, they could actually start securing those services and get rewarded for using those services. Those fees kind of come back, right, through a restaking protocol, whereas in the past you didn't have that loop as far as like, oh, you had to go and hold another governance token to have exposure to that ecosystem. So that's kind of how we see it and how we're excited about it. But at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to the NCNs and what kind of risk parameters they set and what kind of assets they're comfortable actually to be used to secure their services.
Yeah, I agree with everything he said. I think the reason that the Jito restaking was designed the way it was is because like there's still a lot of unknowns about a lot of these questions. Like, you know, you can get a lot of staked L1 assets for cheap, but people, I think a lot of these consensus networks will want to use their own token in some form or another. And so like being able to, you know, apply 10% or whatever it is to the security, and maybe it grows over time, or maybe it shrinks if it's like very volatile or it's in like a bear market or something and you need more security, you can kind of rebalance it and adjust it. And so I think it's very important to like consider that in the design and not enforce it one way or another. And you know, you can have liquid versions of the stake governance tokens, or you could wrap it and make it so there's not a liquid version, if that makes sense. It's kind of up to ultimately it's up to the consensus network. They like understand what they need the best, and so as long as you provide the tools so it's flexible, then I think everyone wins.
Yep.
Yeah, no. And I mean, so it's going, you know, we expect kind of a lot of SPL tokens in various fashions being involved in NCNs, as well as, you know, a very wide array of what NCNs are available. And I think that really changes the game in terms of risk management because it requires a lot more sophistication. And so, I mean, for either of you guys, how do you think about risk management being fundamentally different in kind of this landscape of restaking versus what we're seeing today? So, you know, how will NCN selection and management evolve? Is it specialized risk managers? Is it something like AI way into the future? Like, how do you handle just the diversity of risk profiles as in addition to the returns available in this landscape?
Yeah, I could go first here. The piece that we're excited as we start digging into Jito and Solana is the benefits of having a consensus layer that is not only much cheaper on a gas perspective, but settlements are much faster. And what that is going to allow for is markets being a lot more fluid, right? So when your barriers from a capital perspective are lower and you're able to move around quicker, it just opens up more opportunities and there's more value that is potentially out there to grab for your stakers. I don't think we're going to see that kind of level of innovation on Ethereum. We've been thinking about this, you know, for quite some time on the Renzo side. And when we first started talking to you guys, those are the exciting pieces, and you know the light bulbs started to pop off again because we haven't been able to do some of these things on Ethereum. So you mentioned AI there. I do think AI does have the opportunity to kind of flourish. It's still going to take a little bit of time, right? Like we're super, super early. First, you have to be able to create frameworks around managing risk, and you have to kind of hone them in and understand what the variables that you're looking for in a protocol and how to measure risk reward, you know, whether it's slashing or we wrote a piece back in December, if you look at the Renzo Mirror, called Portfolio Management 101. and how you define max loss so that users also know what kind of risk they're being exposed to for the rewards that they're getting. But essentially, this ability to be able to rebalance very quickly and efficiently on Jito and Solana is going to make it much more interesting, and there's going to be a lot more changes. So if somebody identifies, let's say a new NCN comes on board, or they need more security and they're emitting larger emissions, in real time, you're going to be able to go and capture or get more exposure to that NCN if it makes sense from a risk awarded reward perspective. Whereas on Ethereum, because it takes 7 days, and if you're using native ETH from the beacon chain, it takes up to 10 days just to be able to reposition that stake and secure another AVS. It's much slower and it's much more expensive, and you can't do that. So there's a time piece to actually that cost, and the switchover effect where on Jito, we're going to be able to realize that and see that much more fluid in real time.
That's an interesting point. I think like something that I've personally observed is like in some ways the market on Solana is a lot more efficient across DeFi, just because the switching costs are so much lower that you actually see much higher turnover and like just the cycles of kind of movement of capital and like the hot ball of money, as they call it. Like it's pretty vicious on Solana because you can do so much with like very little money. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes the dynamic.
Even at like a fundamental, at a very simple perspective, if it costs you $50 to, let's say, mint an LRT, and then it takes you 10 days to be able to unstake it to get that collateral, when you think about building DeFi integrations that really rely on arbitrage opportunities, the shorter the window and the lower the gas costs to be able to arb an opportunity makes markets significantly more efficient. So on Ethereum right now, we're seeing for the past few months for a 7-day withdrawal, it's a 25 bip discount on the LRT to the underlying collateral, because there's that time factor that needs to be calculated into getting that collateral back to ARB, right? So there's like little things like that that really compound. And what that actually means at the end of the day is that users, that value is captured by users more than going to secondary or third integration partners that need to pay to essentially maintain the ecosystem. So it's a net win for the user at the end of the day.
Something else that I think is kind of interesting compared to Ethereum and like other restaking protocols is that of course there's going to be like the L2s and things like that on Solana. Like some of that is like unavoidable, but that's not the only use case for the like restaking protocol. In fact, like the switchboard, I don't know the technical details, but I imagine, they're already on mainnet live today. And so like that's a consensus network that will run on top of Solana squads as well. And so when you have a lot of these networks that are just running on the L1, then the like composability and data that you can see in the runtime will just be so much more. Like if you want to, if you're managing risk for like an L2 or something, and there's like data that you need to access on these different like layers, then getting access to that data is much harder. Where on Solana, it's so cheap and fast to write data on chain that you can just like load up data in the runtime and view it. And it just makes like reasoning about everything much easier. Some other stuff I think is like the risks should be like fully modelable on Solana. And so the restaking protocol has caps on slashing there, where you can only slash up to some amount of assets per operator per epoch. And so you can actually like look at all of that on Solana and figure out, what is at risk. And so I think it will be like the protocol will be very transparent, and like hopefully as the complexity of AVS or as the complexity of consensus networks grows, then we want to try to keep things simple, and having everything on Solana, or as much as you can have on Solana, will make the like transparency and management of the protocol much easier.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think we've talked about some of the benefits of how we think restaking plays out differently on Solana. Obviously, there's very impressive stuff happening on Ethereum, and then there's even, Bitcoin restaking happening. I mean, I think a question of like we're getting internally, talking to others about that would be curious for both of you guys' takes on is how you see the cross-chain dynamics of restaking evolving in the sense that like, could there even be like aggregated cross-chain restaking security that people, select networks for different opportunities? Are people just going to kind of like pick their horse in the beginning and stick with it? I mean, any thoughts on like, there's obviously, I think, a long way out from being in production, but it's starting to be something that I think we are seeing a lot of mindshare kind of evolve on as there are other networks going live.
Yeah, I think the first place that we will see some kind of adoption is cross-chain bridges. So if you think about Wormhole and the security that they need in order to be able to secure assets going cross-chain, that makes sense. But I think we're still a couple years away from actually seeing those kind of mechanisms play out. It feels like we've been building forever on top of Ethereum, but it's really only been a little over a year. We started May of 2023, and we are seeing this cycle significantly accelerate. But I also think it's super important not to get ahead of ourselves and really be able to establish the right risk frameworks around being able to secure NCNs and AVSs. And understand slashing and the compounding effects they're going to have before we start really spreading that shared security kind of cross chain. So I think in that aspect, the Renzo team's a lot more conservative around how we're expanding and how we're growing. We're not going to be on every single ecosystem. We're going to be extremely selective. And the biggest value add that we think that we bring between Ethereum and Solana on Jito is there's going to be lessons learned, and we're just striving to be experts at being able to manage restaking risk. And the things that we learn on Ethereum, we're going to be able to bring to Solana, and the things that we learn on Solana, we might be able to bring back to Ethereum as well. So I think there's been a lot of controversy, over the past year around restaking and how much risk it's actually introducing into the ecosystem. So we just need to learn and really start applying these things. And we're super excited to see the pace that you and your team are kind of moving and some of the boundaries that you're going to be pushing there.
So Jito, Lucas, I think people may be hearing some new terminology here around NCN, VRT, kind of, can you talk about the language that Jito decided to use for their restaking program and why these decisions were made to deviate somewhat from the precedent set by Eigenlayer?
Yeah, I think naming things is very hard. We struggle with it a lot internally, but I think pretty happy with like the names that we've chosen for this. I think NCN stands for Node Consensus Network. So it's a node, some piece of software, consensus, things are being agreed upon in some fashion, and there's a network of these things kind of working together to work towards some like common goal, whether it's like an oracle or a bridge or MPC related network. And so I think like we hope that when we say node consensus network, it's like pretty obvious what it does. And then the same for VRT. That's a vault receipt token. There's two main programs in the Jito restaking protocol. There's the restaking program and the vault program. The vault program manages the vault receipt token. It's essentially a tokenized receipt of assets that you've put into the vault program. And so that can be LSTs, it can be governance tokens, USDC, and essentially any SPL token.
So Jito has started calling its restaking product as well, also RE in parentheses. Is there like a rationale for the parentheses, or how do you guys think about that distinction?
Jito restaking is a multi-asset staking protocol. And so you can stake already staked assets like ezSOL or other LSTs, and you continue to earn the yield from those in addition to any node consensus network yield, or you can stake governance tokens to AVSs that would like to accept it for collateral.
I can help out here a little bit. Essentially, like one of the biggest things that we see our users don't understand is that with restaking, you actually get the base staking rewards and then you have additional rewards on top. So when you combine the word without any kind of separation or anything, people don't, like, a lot of times it amazes me, they don't think they're getting actually staking yield. They think they're getting a different kind of yield. So I don't know, maybe there's a way, because I have seen the parentheses as well. It's not like it's a new thing. It's a new thing on top of staking. And that's what you guys are trying to kind of call out. It's a huge learning curve. I can't tell you like how many people we talk to, and they're like, oh, so you guys take in SETH and you dump it for ETH and then you restake it. And we're like, no. Like, we use that as a collateral and you get those rewards and then we use it for other things. So.
Yeah, no, I think that explains it perfectly. You can stake LSTs, you can stake governance tokens. Yeah, that's basically it.